Is it possible to bank for free? It's a digital age. We're going to talk about it. Let's begin.
This is Debt Free in 30. Here's your host, Doug Hoyes.
Welcome to Debt Free in 30. I have a first-time guest here. Tell me, what is your name?
My name is Charlie Kovacs.
You already knew that. Charlie actually works here at Hoyes Michaelis. His office is just over there somewhere. And the reason I wanted to have you on is because, well, the answer is because you're young. And so you will know stuff that old people won't know. But this isn't a show for young people. It's a show for everybody. And so what I want to talk about today is, I don't know what the title of this show is going to be. We don't figure it out until we actually put it up. But it'll either be something like high-tech banking for the digital age or how to bank for free. That's probably an even better topic. So when I was your age, and we're not going to tell people how old you are, we went to a bank. That's how it worked. When was the last time that you were in a bank?
Last time I was in a bank would have been in 2020, right before everything
all of the events
down.
happened.
Right.
And I think a lot of people are in the same boat, that it's been a long time since anyone did anything like that. So let's start by talking about how can I bank for free? Let's start with that. Because when I go to the bank, my bank account, and I now have a seniors bank account. I know, pretty cool, eh? And so they charge me a bunch of money, but then I get some kind of rebate or something. I don't know exactly how it works. But a conventional bank account at a conventional bank has a service charge.
Usually, yes.
How can I not have a service charge? Let's start with that.
So normally the service charges are related to banks that you're going to in person. So a lot of the newer online, whether it's a digital checking or savings account, they don't have a monthly fee. Now, there might be some fees for a currency exchange or something like that. So there are fees that are in some of these banks. However, if you're just doing your banking from your phone, from the computer, a lot of them just don't have a monthly fee.
Now, as frequent listeners know, we don't have any sponsors on this show.
Of course not.
We should, but nobody has ever phoned me up to give me money. So, but we'll mention names today, because why not? It's not like anyone's paying to be on this show. So when you say digital or free or whatever, who are you talking about?
So for speaking specifically about a checking account, somewhere you can deposit a check or write a check from, that would be like your Simply Financial, Tangerine Bank, something like that. Those would be your most common options.
Those would be the two common ones. Okay. And then, there's credit unions as well that do things. There's bricks and mortar banks do have special programs and whatever, if you're a senior, if you're a young, or whatever.
And they'll also do the minimum kind of style checking accounts where you get like something like 6 or 8 transactions for the month and you pay a lower cost for that. However, if you can manage with the lower amount of transactions, then perhaps you pay that lower fee, but why limit yourself with transactions if you do a lot of transactions from that checking account?
And the advantage of one of these digital, we don't have a branch type places, is virtually no fees except for maybe special things like you say.
Exactly.
I got to get traveler's checks or whatever. I don't know if that's even a thing anymore.
I've never seen or used a traveler's check.
There you go. So I don't know if they still exist or not, because we all have credit cards now. So the reason they have no or low fees is because they don't have the infrastructure, the branches, and all the rest of it.
Exactly.
But as you said, you haven't been in a bank in 4 years anyways.
Exactly.
So if I get paid electronically, then no big deal. Might as well use an electronic bank. Now, what if I get paid by check?
That's where, using a mobile app, so you can take a photo of checks for some of these checking accounts and actually deposit them if your bank offers that. Obviously, it's not going to work for everyone, right? If you're going into the bank frequently, if you're doing bank drafts on a regular basis, if you're selling cars or selling houses or something like that, you always need kind of those proof of funds, cashier's check, money orders, that sort of thing. That's not going to be where an online free bank account is going to make a ton of sense.
Yeah, the perfect person for this is, I've got a job, I get paid electronically, I get paid every week, every 2 weeks, whatever it is.
Or there's some benefits that you get on certain days of the month, whether it's parental benefits or EI or something like that. You're just getting some deposits to that account. I mean, you can register these accounts, with a direct deposit with CRA.
With anybody.
Yep.
Yeah, and if I have a job working at a restaurant, I'm a server at a restaurant, and they pay me by check every week, then I can still use a digital bank, but I'm going to be taking a picture with my phone to deposit it in most cases. the issue there becomes, is there a hold period? How long does it take to clear? That sort of thing. And this is particularly relevant for a lot of the clients you deal with because you're a credit counselor as well. When someone files a proposal or a bankruptcy, the first thing you say to them before they even file is, you got to open a new bank account.
Yes, exactly.
And the reason you tell them that is why?
Just to get them a fresh start, right? It's most important to have that new bank account so that, the bank doesn't take money if you owe them, or, none of the other people that you owed money to go in and scoop any funds that you need to live, right? To pay your rent, to pay for food, get yourself around.
It's always good to separate your assets from your liabilities. So if you go out and get a payday loan, which I am not a big fan of, but okay, the deal is 2 weeks from now on payday, we're going to go into your bank and take the money out. Well, if in the meantime you file a bankruptcy or a proposal or something, well, they're still going to go in and take the money out because they haven't been notified, they haven't shut it off. So opening a separate bank account prevents that from happening. Same thing with your automatic payments to your credit card, your line of credit, whatever. So that's why opening the new account is a good idea. But if you get paid by check and you open a new account, now you're a new client. And so now we're going to put a hold on it.
Exactly. So there may be a 5-day hold for something like a paper check, even if you deposit it, with at the ATM, or if it's by camera, right? Maybe you save yourself a trip to the bank if you want to do things that way. But there's, there are ways that you can kind of set up your budget to maybe account for something like that, right?
Yeah, putting everything on a leg. And I guess if your employer banks at Bank ABC, well, maybe that's the account you set the new bank account up at, so that at least if I have to go into the teller to deposit it, they can clear it right away.
And you should be able to ask that type of question with the person who manages your payroll, because that could be the difference between having a hold and having the check clear almost instantly.
Well, and you can tell who your employer banks with by looking at the check, because it'll be on there. Most people don't care because it doesn't matter. So, okay. So in most cases though, we get paid electronically. You pay your rent electronically because you do an e-transfer to your landlord or whatever.
Exactly.
You go to the grocery store and you tap the thing. I just figured out how to do that. Actually, it's pretty cool. You already know how to tap. So, okay. So that saves a lot of money. Now let's talk about a whole bunch of other things though that, in this brave new world that we live in, where we don't write checks anymore. When was the last time you wrote a check?
It's been a couple years.
Okay, so because again, you pay your rent by e-transfer, you buy your groceries with your debit card.
Normally, and you're entitled as a renter to pay your rent in a variety of different ways, but e-transfer is one of them. Check is another one of them. So sometimes having checks available as a renter, not a bad thing, because if there's an issue and you just need to write the check and tell them to cash it on the 28th or something like that, could be a good option.
Yeah, the problem with checks, of course, is even though you've put the first of the month on the check, well, they could deposit it 3 days early, and if the person at the bank isn't looking, then you got an issue. So, okay, so free bank accounts, we talked about that. Tell me about so that's the spending side of it. Then let's talk about debit cards, loadable credit cards. Like what are all the kids using today?
So with your loadable prepaid, they call them Loop MasterCards or Visas, right? So if you ever look in these things up, you'd be looking up a prepaid MasterCard or a prepaid Visa card. So they offer cashback incentives on certain categories, just like a credit card. But the difference is you're loading up those accounts one time. So maybe you put in $50, maybe you put in $100. Those are your funds to spend. You get the benefits, similar benefits, like the 2% cash back on groceries or gas or whatever it is. But you're not incurring debt to do that. So it's a really common and popular option among people that we speak with, just because you're not racking up new debt, but you still get that, benefit as a consumer of using the different, the major card issuers. So using something like that can work for a budget. If you've got a couple different accounts set up, you can get a paycheck deposited right into one of these cards, right? They've got the banking number, they've got the institution number, they've got the account number. The difference being the check, right? It's not a checking account because you can't deposit a check and you can't write a check from a lot of these accounts.
Okay, so we got to break this down here because you're kind of losing me here. are we talking about Visa and MasterCard here?
So it's a loadable Visa or MasterCard.
Loadable Visa or MasterCard.
Yeah.
Okay. And so what kind of institutions offer these?
That would be like Coho, President's Choice Financial. It's like a PC money account. EQ Bank has a loadable MasterCard. Wealthsimple's got a loadable MasterCard. And you can tailor it.
See, all these people should be advertising on this show for all this free publicity we're giving them. But,
and so all of them have a different advantage, right? Maybe if you're getting your groceries at Superstore all the time, you're going to Shoppers to pick up prescriptions, maybe that makes sense for you because maybe you just want to have some incentives to buy your groceries there. Maybe. Or maybe you'd like to do
I think everyone boycotts them and nobody goes there anymore.
Maybe. And so maybe groceries and gas you do with like something like Coho. Maybe you have some other big purchases that you do with your Wealthsimple card. You're getting cash back there. It's a loadable card. Maybe you already have accounts there and maybe that makes sense.
And so all those accounts you mentioned, they don't cost me anything. I'm not paying a monthly fee on it.
No.
So let's talk about Coho then, because you mentioned them. So they are a digital bank
that also offer credit rebuilding products. There's a variety of things under their umbrella, but one of them is the loadable MasterCard.
So let's say that I've gone through a bankruptcy or proposal, or my credit's bad, or I just want to get away from all the big banks and I want to manage my money really tightly. So I decide, okay, I'm going to go to Coho. And I'm going to get a loadable credit card. Is it a Visa or MasterCard? Do we know there? It's one or the other.
MasterCard.
Okay. So I get my Coho loadable MasterCard. I've got a Coho bank account. And I have my employer depositing my paycheck into my Coho bank account.
Exactly.
And then I can just go onto the app on my phone and move the money over load up my card.
Yeah, that's the terminology they use. So whether you've got the account there, but you can load funds onto the card and you can use those instantly to spend. So a change in the last couple of years is the speed at which you can load the cards. A few years ago, maybe before COVID, these options were available, but the loading still took 30, 40, 50 minutes, an hour, maybe even 2 hours for a larger amount. With some of the changes that they've made to, I think they call it open banking, those funds are available much quicker. So it's like an instant deposit for those funds. And again, we're pulling from a bank account. It's not instant, it's not instant credit.
Right.
It's not instant MasterCard funds available. These are your funds from your bank account, whether it's an employer deposit, EI deposit, CPP, anything like that.
So I could get a loadable card and I could say, that's what I'm going to use to buy my groceries. And today my budget for buying groceries is $100. So I go to my app and I got $100 in my bank account. I slide it over. Boom. I got $100 on that card. I go to the bank and I buy my stuff and I tap it and I don't even have to put in my password and everything. And if for some reason I lose my card, well, it doesn't matter. There's no money in it anyways. It's whatever's been loaded in it, that's all that's there.
And the same customer service would be available, right? You just go ahead and cancel that card because that's a specific card. It's not going to have access to all of your different accounts. And of course, the alternative to that is using some sort of, credit card where maybe the cashback rewards are similar or the same, but now you've got to keep track of what's my utilization at, what's my statement date, what's my payment date, will I be able to pay this off? Will I be able to afford the 29% interest if I can't?
Right.
So there's a lot more considerations for a creditor, and it ends up being a much more complicated transaction as a consumer who maybe you're budgeting with less.
So the advantage is I can only spend what I put on it, so can't get into any trouble. But there are still potentially rewards that I get from it. There's cashbacks and other things like that.
Exactly. And this is the alternative to maybe like a retail card of the past, right? You had like Sears cards in the past, the Bay credit cards in the past. These are things that
you're talking like an old man here. So I'm surprised you even know what Sears is.
These things aren't very common anymore. There's not retail cards. So now we get a lot of the buy now, pay later, these digital only cards, because this is where the consumer trends are going, right? These companies, they know what they're doing, right? They're skating to where the puck's going. They understand that the younger demographic maybe doesn't want huge Amex, MasterCard, Visa accounts. You want the cash back, you want the points, you want the perks, but you don't want the debt.
Well, and I want to slag young people here, but I think it's also they don't qualify for the $50,000.
100%. You're not, and who's paying? Like no young people are paying these huge card fees, and maybe if you are, maybe you're getting those benefits, right? Maybe you've got a business, you're doing a lot of the minimum spend, but for some people, they don't even qualify based on the minimum spend.
Yeah. So if I have no choice, but I need a credit card, and you need a credit card for some stuff, right? It's kind of hard to rent a car. I don't know, pay for your Netflix or whatever. book an airline ticket, buy stuff online. And I understand you can use debit cards to do that. It's not impossible, but this is the way to get the ability to use the credit card. It doesn't matter what your credit score is, because it's loadable, and you've got a cap on it, so you can't spend too much. You can only spend what you got.
And this is categorically different than a secured MasterCard, which we've talked about before.
Well, so tell us the difference between loadable and secured.
So your secured MasterCard is actually a revolving product that will report on your credit bureau, Equifax or TransUnion. And so what that account does, it allows you to use the card on a revolving basis as long as that balance is paid. But you're putting down a security deposit. So call it $300, $400, $500 that you're sending, by a bill payment to the card issuer, the lender, and they're allowing you to use that credit card to rebuild your credit, to use it for purchases. However, again, now you've got to keep track of your utilization. You got to keep track of the statement date, your payment date, and okay, if I've got interest, I'm now paying interest on top of my security deposit. So if money's tight, there might be a better option out there.
Yeah, and the security deposit is kind of locked away. So yes, they give you the ability to spend up to that amount, but I could have just spent the money if it hadn't been locked up. So a reloadable card does not help my credit score.
No.
Doesn't hurt it, because it's not credit. It's just like a debit card in effect, because the money has to be there before I spend it. So,
and if rebuilding the credit is the goal, there are other products under a similar umbrella, right? You talked about Coho earlier. They offer a similar kind of parallel program with the credit rebuilding. Again, the point being, we want a practical option for consumers that's, it's oriented to the digital age, right? You can add these cards to your digital wallet on your phone, right? You can use your phone to pay for stuff. So that's something where you don't have to wait for a card to come in the mail. If you're filing a proposal or bankruptcy, you need a new bank account tomorrow, right? Pay comes in the next few days. Maybe that's something where you can get the card loaded up. We can switch gears really quick, and maybe it's a better option for you.
Yeah, no, that totally makes sense. So I think the key point here is, what do you need, and then figure out the options that go around it. So if what I'm really trying to do is build my credit score, well, okay, a reloadable card doesn't do that. But if what I'm really trying to do is manage my finances, not get into any trouble, I need a credit card, I don't have the best credit score in the world, then it's a perfect option. And I guess there's no limit on how many of these you can get.
No, and because they're all free, you don't have to keep track of keeping $15.95 in all of them, right? If you wanted 10, just set up 10.
Yeah, it sounds crazy, and I think it is crazy, but you could have, this is the credit card I used to buy gas for my car, and this is the credit card I used to buy groceries, and this is the one I buy from Amazon on.
A lot of people do that with credit cards, though, right? So this is like the alternative to doing that in terms of keeping track of your statement dates, your payment dates. This is a more accessible alternative for people that still need the utility and the accessibility that those card issuers grant you without having, like you said, the security deposit, the income requirements, minimum spend requirements, that sort of thing.
And I'm not a fan of having 15 different things, because I think that becomes an issue.
Maybe less than 10. Maybe less than 10.
So let's talk about other digital stuff then. So, okay, so I've got, my system set up. I want to keep track of how I'm spending my money. Now, because I've been preaching. How long have you worked at this company that we're at here? Like many years.
4.5 years.
4.5 years. So I'm not a big fan of budgeting. I think it's a waste of time, because I don't think people do it. I think it's exactly like counting calories. Okay, great. I'll do it for 3 days, and then I go off the wagon and I stop. However, I do agree that it's important to know where your money goes. So what's the fancy digital way to keep track of where my money's going?
Well, if you're using the loadable debit cards as part of your system, you can kind of have like your income coming into maybe a free checking account, right? Have the accessibility if you ever need to deposit checks, you might get a check for something in the mail, that sort of thing. Have that account open for income coming in, right? Have one area that your income comes into. Don't pay bills out of that account. Pay bills out of a separate account, right? So have a bill payment, rent's coming out of that. Maybe you got some other pre-authorized payments, car insurance, car payments, that sort of thing. Have an income account, have a bill paying account, and then open up a prepaid MasterCard and use that as your spending. So again, income comes into the first account, and use a loadable MasterCard, and then you can keep track. You can look at all the deposits to that account and say, okay, $600-$700 this month between gas, groceries, and other miscellaneous spending. Or maybe it's like you keep track every couple of weeks, every time you get paid. So when deposits are going into one account, and that's the account that you're using primarily for all the regular day-to-day spending, you can keep a lot closer eye on it. And then of course, you don't have to budget for your rent payments and your car payments. You know what those are going to be, right? Those are your fixed costs. What we're talking about is those variable costs.
Yeah, and my problem with the system you just defined there is I'm going to screw it up because I've got my rent money. So I get paid every 2 weeks. I get paid $1,000 every 2 weeks, goes into my income account. Well, my rent is $1,500 a month. I'm living in a dream world, obviously, with the numbers I'm using here. But so I got to transfer the money over to the rent account where the landlord's going to take it out. Maybe a simpler example would be my cell phone.
Okay.
If I have, I could set it up to automatically pay my cell phone bill every 2 weeks. It's $100 a month. I take $50 every 2 weeks out of my account. Well, if my pay goes in every other Friday and I set up the automatic bill payments to be every other Friday, I don't have to move anything around.
Exactly.
So it seems to me like, oh wait, my income comes in here, but then I've got to transfer it over to here.
You can automate it though, right? It's the same.
You can do that now?
Yeah, exactly. So if you can get your spending dialed in where you know that it's going to be $400 every 2 weeks for groceries, or if it's going to be $500 a month on a different category, if you know what that number is, that takes some expense tracking. Though we need to maybe measure those outputs before we start the pre-authorized amount. But you definitely can do that. You can definitely set up a regular amount to be deposited to something like a
and
prepaid
do these?
MasterCard.
I mean, I remember in the old days, everybody used to use Mint. But then they went bust.
Shut down, yeah.
Whatever. So is there something that's replaced it, or is it as simple as, well, it's all listed on my bank account, it's all there?
Not exactly, but to be an informed consumer, I think you should keep that data for yourself. I don't think you should give access to a third-party company for your banking transactions, your spending history, all that different stuff, maybe 3 or 4 accounts. Maybe that's not a good idea. Keep track of it yourself, right? So if you're a digital person, you want to use a spreadsheet, just use Google Sheets. You don't even have to have Microsoft Excel. Right? You can use Google Sheets on a Chromebook, on a phone, anything like that.
And can you export from one to the other?
Yes.
So there you go. So that's.
But if you're looking to maybe do this in a way that's a little bit more simple, just graphing paper, keep track. Get a notebook, get a planner. Keep track that way. But keep track of your own money, right? Keep track of your own budget, because surrendering access to a third-party company for all your different bank accounts. I mean, in today's world with the security risks, right? We haven't really talked about that with the digital cards, but like all different passwords, all different combinations, because you don't want somebody to get access to one and be able to access all your different accounts.
You realize that Google Sheets is a big, huge company, right? And you're
exactly
basically giving them access. I mean, everybody's got access to everything.
But you're just giving them dollar values, right? You're not giving them passwords and usernames, right? So if they want to know how much you spend at Costco, I think that might be okay.
Yeah. They're going to figure it out one way or the other.
Exactly.
I don't know if you were reading the Wall Street Journal last weekend, but they had an article about young people pooling at Costco. So, okay, one person has the card, the membership. 3 of them go there every couple of weeks, and we all load up.
Yep.
And
we used to do that in university. One of my roommates, he had a Costco card, and we'd all go and split the bill and do a little.
They actually had the example of a university kid who did that, and he said, "Yeah, the problem is we've got this tiny little kitchen, and so we got all this stuff, and you kind of got to eat it in 3 days, or else it all goes bad." So it's
focus on that stuff for like the non-perishables, right?
Yeah, the chicken breast was probably not the
and then you get a hot dog on the way out.
That's what he said. You got to get that $1.50 hot dog. So, okay, so again, the data is there. You figure out how to use it. And you're right. You want to be hyper security conscious. You got a piece of paper and you write it down. But a spreadsheet works as well, so you can see what's going on. So, you got any other thoughts on that point?
Yeah, the thing you really want to focus on are those variable costs, right? Variable costs being your gas, your groceries, any other kind of household spending, children's stuff, because you don't have to budget your fixed expenses as much. Once they're there for the year, once you know what your rent's going to be for the year. Now, we're not going to talk about variable rate mortgages or anything like that, but those fixed costs, you don't have to. You can pull them right out of the budget, right? All you got to focus on is those once in a 3 or 4 month car maintenance, car expenses, something like that pops up. Those are the things to double down on. Really understand where your money goes.
Yeah, and that's why I like separate accounts as a savings vehicle. So okay, I've got a TFSA over here, which we can debate whether that's what you should be using for your savings or not. But if you've got $50,000 worth of TFSA contribution room, then why not? But you can have at all of these different banks you mentioned separate savings accounts as well.
Of course.
So, okay, car maintenance, it's not regular, but I know it's going to happen. I know it's probably going to cost me $1,000 this year for whatever's going to go wrong. So every paycheck, I'm going to put X number of dollars into that separate account that I don't even look at. It's gone, and then it's there when I need it.
Definitely agree with you on this separate for the savings accounts. Just leaving money in a regular checking account that creditors might or might have access to. Now you have to play the subtraction game. You got a couple of grand in there. Now you have to do the subtraction of, well, what are my costs going to be, and how much is the brake job going to be on the vehicle? And I forgot about, I got to pay for summer camps or something like that. Doing the subtraction method really requires a lot of effort. And like what we talked about before, if you're doing a lot of effort for the budget, it's
not going to work.
May not work long term.
The problem is you've got access to it. That's the problem. So when I go to the store, I can see in the app that I got this much money. If it's in a separate account, well, I don't see it on that particular
It's not
app.
for everyday spending.
Right. It's not for everyday spending. So how do I, we're back on this whole free stuff. How do I file my taxes for free?
There's a variety of different tax software that you can use to file for free. Again, we're talking about, relatively simple return, T4 or 2, maybe some benefits. A lot of this can be auto-filled once your slips are into the machine.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of that. You got your My CRA account, your T4 is already in there. You set it up, you go boom, sucks it all in. So what are your thoughts on Wealthsimple, who are also not a sponsor of this show? They got lots of money. I don't know why they aren't. But so, a lot of people tell me, well, they got, free software to do your taxes. So,
they do.
So why not? Is that a good option?
It is a good option. They're very similar to other free tax filing software. The big thing you're capturing as somebody filing a relatively simple tax return every time you're doing this is you're encompassing any of the changes that might not be on CRA's website. Did your marital status change? Did you move across the country? Did you incur a bunch of childcare costs? All these things that aren't necessarily in your My CRA account. If you're a relatively straightforward, like we talked about before, pay gets deposited, T4, maybe a few benefits, there's no reason that you need to, pay a huge sum to have somebody else do it for you.
Yeah, and I'm a big believer, as you are, because you already said it, in keeping an eye on your own stuff. So I keep track of my expenses, but if I'm filing my taxes myself, I realize, oh my goodness, that's how much I had to pay this year? I made this much and I got to pay this much. This is what I paid for CPP and EI and all the rest of it. I think it kind of puts it right in your face.
The net income number, for sure, because I think there's maybe that perception of, here's my number and, that's what I budget on, when really almost nobody is budgeting on their gross income numbers.
Right. Yeah, it's what you actually get to keep. So, and that makes it a lot more clear. Oh, if I put some money into an RRSP or a home buyer's account or something, my taxes would have changed. 100%. I think that really, narrows it in for you. And places like Wealthsimple and Simply and Tangerine, they've all got high interest savings accounts too.
Yes, exactly. And a lot of times too, I really encourage people, go out and see who's got the best rate, right? Everyone's always competing. They're running the 6-month promos, right? So let's just say you got $1,000 for those car repairs you talked about. Well, if someone's offering you 5.75, great. Why not take it? Oh, the next month that's 6%, right? Maybe interest rates go up, maybe they go down. Chase the promotional rate, right? For a free high interest savings account, when you're moving money between accounts, you just want to have access to those funds, right? You don't want to invest them. You don't want to put them at risk. But like an insured CDIC, high interest savings account, just chase the promotional value, right? Like whether it's 5.75, 4.75, whatever it is, as long as you've got access to that. And I really do believe that access should come with a card too. Some of the digital only high interest savings accounts, you've got to transfer those funds to a destination account. Not going to say that this would happen. It did happen when I was a university student, but a certain bank did have like a pretty significant outage. And I had friends who they weren't able to access funds on their card, right? That makes your life really difficult. So I think if you were ever worried about, there being some sort of outage, I know we had a Rogers outage a few years ago, something like that happens and all of your money is in one account, you're trying to transfer it out. I think having a card for that high interest savings account for an emergency fund, I think it makes sense. You need a tow truck in the middle of the night, you want to be able to access those funds.
Yeah, that's an excellent idea. I mean, I guess having $20 in your pocket is always a good idea too. That won't pay for a tow truck. But,
I think you need a 50 now. I think the
right.
I think the $20 bill is now a 50. Yeah. I think you need a 50 and a 5 when you leave the house.
It's a few 20s that you need. Well, and I like your comment about chasing the promotional rate, because this is the difference between you young people and the old people. Old people like me, it's like, well, I've been banking at the same bank for 50 years. And it's very common that people stay with the same bank forever. Like, that was my parents' bank.
That is 100% true.
And so, but And as a result, your bank pays you 0% on your savings account because they know you're not going anywhere.
Yes.
And now in this digital age, when you can just digitally transfer stuff anywhere, it's like, okay, so I had this same discussion with my son on the weekend, who's the same age roughly as you. And he said, yeah, for the last 6 months, Tangerine hasn't had any offers for me. So I haven't given any money. Well, guess what? The offer popped up that I get, X%. And so it's like, okay, well, I'll take some money over here. Game on, baby. I'm going to move it over. And then when that promotional period ends, okay, I'll put it to wherever it needs to go. So
as a consumer, you got to be informed, right? Do a little bit of research. It doesn't take much. They're all running sponsored ads on Google all the time about their deposit accounts, especially in today's environment where interest rates are a little bit higher. They're willing to pay you to move some funds over, and why not do it? Especially in an age where it's really easy to do it from your phone. A transfer takes maybe 2 or 3 business days. We're not talking about having to go into a bank branch, wire money, anything like that. You can do it all from your phone or from your computer.
And so why not? And I guess that's, to sum this all up, why you maybe have 3 or 4 different accounts at 3 or 4 different institutions. And okay, I got my main bank and this is where I do everything, but I've got this one, and this one. So you got the best rates, boom. You got the better deal, you got this, boom. I just move it around.
And with no monthly fees, why not move around to who's got the best rate, right? Advocate for yourself as a consumer. You don't have to stay with a bank just because you've been with them in the past, right? If all of a sudden that relationship isn't benefiting you anymore as a consumer, the banks make piles of money. So why not, be a little bit greedy and take a little bit of savings rate for yourself?
Is this kid cutthroat or what, people? But I like it. I agree. This is why we have no sponsors on
and there's
the show,
maybe that difference with the generation, right? I think maybe years ago, maybe you benefited a lot from having a relationship with the bank. Maybe you got a mortgage, something like that. Obviously, it's a lot different now for young people. And I think that sense of, well, they're not doing anything for me. I'm no closer to my financial goals because of my bank. It's because of my own behavior. Why not just chase something that's going to make me in a better spot 6, 12, 18 months from now?
I totally agree. And you're right. It used to be, well, I'm more likely to be able to get that car loan if the branch manager knows me because I've got my checking account, my savings account, my RSP. I got everything there. Whereas now, you're right, it's all the decisions are made by some computer in the sky.
It's the computer, right? Yeah, exactly. They're punching numbers in. You're seeing a different teller every time you walk into the bank, right? Yep. It's not that personal first name basis, anything like that anymore.
So you might as well play the game. So, I totally agree. You got to advocate for yourself, do what's best for you. The banks are making lots of money, so you decide for yourself.
Yeah, why not make a little bit for yourself?
Yeah,
right?
I agree. So there you go. I think that's an excellent way to end that. So there you go. Charlie Kovacs. Chase the promotional rate, people. The banks aren't in it for you. You got to advocate for yourself. I think that's fantastic advice. Charlie, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me.
I will put links in the show notes to everything we talked about, including the different banks. And I mean, you all know who they are, but I agree. You got to advocate for yourself and go what works the best for you. For those people who are watching on YouTube, go click all the buttons. You know about all the buttons, right? There's the notification and the
like and subscribe,
all that stuff. So everybody do all that. You can pop a question down. If you disagree with anything Charlie said, if you think the banks deserve to make more money, you can put a comment in there, and
sure,
I'm sure he'll go on and respond. If you're listening to this on audio, which is how most people listen to it, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, whatever, same thing, subscribe. There is a new podcast that is released every Saturday morning, including next Saturday. So we will be back there for that. Until then, thanks for listening and watching. I'm Doug Hoyes. That was Debt Free in 30.